What's up, everybody? Welcome to We Have Cool Friends, the cool show where we interview our cool friends about the cool things they're doing. I'm Greg, and this is my cool friend, Steven Spohn. Yay!
Woo! Yay! We did it, everybody.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing okay. How are you hanging in there?
I can't complain too much. I get to work in shorts now and hang out with my dog all day. Sometimes he poops on me in the middle of a show. Not too bad.
Well, I mean, you're wearing pants, so that's more than most of us. So
Yeah, well, again, shorts. Shorts. Difference.
Listen, I'll teach you how to be a streamer. Oh, you're getting there.
How am I doing, Steven? Am I doing well?
Closer. Getting closer.
Oh, good. That's why I don't have this amazing. A lot of people listen to this as an MP3, of course, as a podcast. Right now, you have the most amazing green screen background.
Listen, I like to open the worlds and expand upon them. So
you've come down. You're. What I like about you is you've democratized it, right? You're not going to come down from your mountaintop to talk to us. You're going to stay at the top of the mountain and talk to us.
I'm going to bring you up to my level. Is what I'm going to do. See
Steven, somebody tuning in, somebody listening the first time has no idea who you are. Mm-hmm. Who are you?
I am a man on Earth. All right, next question.
No, let's boil it down a little bit. Drill down a little bit more.
All right. Yeah, so I am the Chief Operations Officer of Ablegamers, which is a charity that helps people with disabilities be able to play video games. And in my spare time, which is none, I'm also a Twitch streamer and pretty much turned into a positivity beacon on Twitter at this point.
I was going to say, that's the thing about you, is I think you've transcended. You know what I mean? Like, I was lucky enough to have Khalif on this, Khalif Adams from Spohn on me, on this week on We Have Cool Friends, and you fall into that same thing of, I distinctly remember when I met you, but I also feel like you've been a fabric, part of the tapestry of this industry for so long. But on top of that, you've only gotten bigger and better as it's gone on, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Because it is that I think you came onto the scene with Ablegamers, obviously, but now, like you're saying, you are this beacon of positivity where everyone looks to you, especially when times are hard.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to say that I've gotten bigger other than I really like Oreos. But,
okay, first off, I have the Oreo influencer market cornered. All right, stay away from that.
So I'm coming for you. But second, so Oreo, hit me up. No, but I'm really just trying out there to be as positive as a guy as I can. I have really always been in love with the idea of the Tony Robbins of the world, the Mel Robbins, the Jay Gettys, the ones that go out there and they make videos, and they're not those bullcrap fluff videos that nobody can ever achieve. I want to be a realist. I want to be someone who says, here is an actionable thing that you can do, a mindset that you can hold, and this will help you just feel a little bit better. And I think that there's way too much in society where we have these ideals we can't achieve, or we have these kind of aspirations that'll never come true. Like, I want to be an astronaut. Well, okay, that's great. Only 10 of us can ever be an astronaut. So what you can do is you can be a little bit kinder, and you can start that by reaching out to your friend and saying, hey, are you okay? And actually mean it. Don't just be like, hey, you good? Okay, me too. See you later. That's the little actionable things you can do in order to make the world a better place, one person at a time.
So how hard is it to keep that mindset? Because I think, like, obviously right now we're in a very interesting, dark, weird, confusing time. But on top of that, right, like, if you, again, for people who are audio listeners, like, you're disabled, right? Like, I'm sure it's a struggle for you also. Is that breaking news for you? I'm sorry.
Darn it. Oh, Greg Miller breaking the news again.
I hate with the hard truth.
Thanks for that. Appreciate your service. I like to joke about it because you have to have a sense of humor about things, right? So I think there are way too many times in life where we draw a line between being serious and positive and being funny. I think you can do both. I am somebody who is profoundly disabled, right? For those of you who have not seen me, not met me, I am on a ventilator. I am in a power wheelchair at all times. I have spinal muscular atrophy, which is a terminal condition. I actually have 2 terminal illnesses, and I'm sure we'll get into that eventually. But, the terminal illnesses are a lot of what pushed me in the direction that I'm going, which is keeping an eye on the world and how we can be nicer to each other. And that sort of shapes who you are as a person. When you're constantly thinking about mortality, you're thinking about how much time you got left. And it makes you have some very serious thoughts. But also, anybody who is living with a terminal condition, they can tell you we have some of the darkest humor on the planet. And one of my favorite, actually, I think my first joke to Greg ever was we were talking about stairs and the old studio, kind of funny studio, and I was like, listen, man, I can go downstairs one time, but I haven't found that one time yet. And he's like, Steven, that's like what? Like it's it's totally true. So you have to keep your sense of humor about you. And also like I have a pretty serious job. People die while they're waiting for help from where I work. Because life just has a way of working like that, and it's unfortunate and it's sad. But when you work in the population who is disabled, who has conditions that are serious, you got to have some levity. So, sometimes you will come to my Twitch channel and they'll be like, "Wow, you are not what I thought you'd be." After I just made a dick joke, and they're like, "Well, you got to have some humor too." So it's a matter of walking the line. I think you don't want to be too serious. You don't want to be as funny, and I'll never be as funny as Greg Miller, but I try.
Please. Maybe loud. You'll never be as loud, but that's just years of training. If you want to
Hey,
practice,
what's up, everybody?
Nope, see, not even close. You know
Ah,
what I mean?
damn it.
I could ruin GameSpot's whole operation right now if I wanted to by screaming. You know what I mean? You don't have that kind of power. So,
working on it.
Steve, what do you? I mean, you kind of touched on it there, but I think it's interesting. What do you think is the biggest misconception, not about yourself, but I guess, what do you think like people have in terms of misconceptions about disabled people?
Oh, well, okay, here's the rest of the show. So
I sit back now and watch the views come in.
Yep. Greg's about to go get a sandwich. So I think there's a lot of them. The main ones really are that we don't have the same aspirations. We don't have the same desires as everyone else. When I first got into this, a lot of the feedback I got from developers was them saying, "Oh, you want to play video games?" Yes, I do. They didn't understand, why we wanted to play games, why we wanted to be able to interact with society, have friends. Well, it sounds, when you're talking about it on a podcast like this, it sounds almost surreal or unbelievable. But there are people out there who just don't even understand that we can fall in love, that we can have friends, that people, aren't just in our lives because they feel bad for us. And, there's a certain point where empathy turns into toxic sympathy. And that is something that we have to be aware of just in general and in life is, people just want to be treated equal,
Sure.
So, we're talking about stigmas. It has been a challenge for me. Just getting people to understand simple concepts like so for those of you who have never been in the same room with Greg is a super touchy-feely person. So he will tap you on the shoulder, he will be like, "How's it going?" Pat you on the bicep. Like, he's very respectful, but also very much knows he's there in the moment. He is present with you, and a lot of our communication is actually physical, it's not verbal. And when you're disabled to the level that I am, and a lot of America is, you don't have that, right? So there's up to 46 million players with disabilities who have challenges. They're not all profoundly physically disabled like I am, but a large percentage are. So when you're thinking about how you interact with the world, just imagine, what if you couldn't reach out, you couldn't let someone know you're happy to see them by shaking their hand or by tapping them on the shoulder. You sort of lose that communication avenue, and having to get around that is such a challenge, especially in our industry.
So a lot of this is going to be education, I think, for me. You mentioned how touchy-feely I am in a not creepy way, except for when it's with Nick, then we're both very creepy. But in this situation, like when I do run into you at an event, I do tap you on the shoulder, right? Like
Right.
that's good, right?
It is for me.
Yeah, no, and I know. Obviously, I'm not.
Yeah.
Let's be. You'll be the test case that I base
Yes.
all my
Yes.
opinions and interactions on.
That's me, the model disabled guy. I'm gonna tell you everybody's opinion. No, I mean obviously I'm not a mouthpiece for every disabled person, but
Sure.
yeah, I mean I think it's individualistic. But also for someone like me, I would be a touchy feely Greg level person, always appropriate, but definitely always hey how you doing, um, kind of stuff. And there's such a thing as being touch starved. For
Mhm.
those people who may not be aware of it, being touch starved is when you feel a sense of loneliness, but it's not a sense of loneliness in that you haven't talked to another human being. There are actual endorphins that are released in your brain when someone else touches you. Not inappropriately, not sexually, just on the shoulder, touches
Sure.
you in the arm. It's actually, they teach you that in waitressing and being a waiter. If you, touch someone on the shoulder, they're more likely to give you a bigger tip because it is something that we as humans mostly enjoy. Not everybody does. There's
Sure.
exceptions.
Of course. Of course.
But it's something that is kind of frustrating. I mean, I had a best friend of mine for I want to say 16, 17 years, and it took me until like year 16 to be like, hey, when you hug me, you are like, I can see that you're just like barely grabbing me around the arm and like lightly squeezing. Like I'm not gonna break. I'm not fragile glass. Like you can
Yeah.
actually hug me like you would anyone else, and they're just like, I don't want to hurt you. And it's heartbreaking. It's hard even when somebody who has conversations with you about life and death and your hopes and dreams, even someone that close to you, still kind of afraid to touch you. And it's something that you have to deal with and you have to get over. And it's a hard subject to broach with some people because they just don't necessarily want to, they don't want to ever hurt you inadvertently, and so they would rather just, you can see them like, you can see somebody go for a handshake with me and they will literally just pull back, or go for the hug and they'll be like, wait, can I hug you? And it's like, yeah, go ahead. So
Well, yeah, I think
it's hard.
the sad state of affairs and why I think the work you do and your presence online is so important is the fact that I think so many of us haven't had that close friend and haven't had someone who will tell it to you straight and haven't had like honestly, the day-to-day the regular interactions enough to wrap your head around that. And of course that every case is different. So it is that thing and like I'm, so incredibly lucky for so many reasons, but because of Kind of Funny and IGN and just getting to be myself, the amount of people I've met, right, and people like you and other
Mhm.
disabled gamers and disabled fans or whatever, that I've gotten it and I've gotten through that, right, where it was
Yeah.
in the beginning of just like, oh, this is not strange, that's the wrong term, it's out of the ordinary. And
Yeah.
so then how do you interact well? And then a long time ago got over it to the point of, oh, now I get it. Okay, here's how we do this. Treat everybody
Mhm.
as normal.
Treat everybody as equal, and try to knock the word normal out of your vocabulary,
Yeah.
and go to somebody just as you would anybody else. You know, a really heartbreaking thing that has been discovered in the disability community hasn't been really discussed openly, not in any kind of steps or anything like that with a study. But those of us who are in relationships, with a significant other, have discovered that for a large percentage of people with disabilities who are in relationships, like healthy romantic relationships, it is with someone who has had exposure to people with disabilities before.
Mm.
Because if a lot of those people who I would never date somebody in a wheelchair is because they never had exposure when they were younger. They had a caretaker who's oh don't stare, don't stare, and shoo them away from the person in the wheelchair really quickly, when that's the opposite of what you should do. You should encourage that child. You should be like, don't stare, that's rude, but excuse me sir, would you mind answering this quick question?
Sure.
And not every disabled person has the spoons to entertain questions from everybody constantly.
Leave
But
me
it's
the fuck alone.
right. Oh, man, I'm just trying to get my bread. You know, but at the same time, like it's absolutely insanity when a child honestly is like, "Hey, why are you in that chair?" And it's like you go to explain, like, "Oh, well, actually, it's because I was born with a disability, and it makes me not be able to walk so good." And the mom or dad will pull them away as if they're doing something wrong.
Sure.
And it's one of the things that would be amazing if we could get away from that as a society, to be more inclusive and more interested in each other's lives.
Do you think we're getting better? Like, how old are you? I don't even know how old you are.
Yeah, I am in my late 30s now.
Okay.
So I'm old as dirt compared to you. But
We won't get
Greg's
into
like
how old I am and how late
Greg,
my 30s are right now.
Greg's like 20. Don't let him tell you into what's chat.
Perpetually 20. I
That's
always
right.
got that fake ID.
So it's gotten better. Actually, whenever I'm talking about this, I like to remind people that the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA, is just about as old as we are. Actually, I'm a little bit older than the ADA. And to give everyone who's listening, in case you're wondering, oh, is it really that bad? When when you were young, or maybe way before your time, in the early 80s, a McDonald's could ask you to leave the restaurant if you were disabled because you were making other people uncomfortable to eat their food. That's not hyperbole. That's not a joke. That is absolute thing that McDonald's could and did do. The ADA stopped restaurants from being able to do that. So it was very serious, and things have gotten better. Um, but at the same time, just the last PAX I was at, one of my friends caught somebody behind my back trying to take a picture of the back of my wheelchair like it was R2D2 because it was crazy with lights, and they were like, "Oh, look, it's got dials." And fortunately, I had someone in front of me who reached around behind me and stopped someone from touching my ventilator because it had knobs and buttons, and they thought it was a cosplay, so they wanted to play with it.
Jesus
So
God.
yeah. So, in the one hand, yes, we've gotten better. In another, we need to continue with representation, continue, and that was what was heartbreaking about this virus thing taking away my ability to go down to South by Southwest because,
Right? You were
I'm
winning the
super
award.
grateful. Yeah, I mean, I'm for winning the award, but more so because it was exposure for other people.
Yeah.
Um, I'm a human being, so of course I like the accolades, and of course I like being friends with Greg Miller. I like to be on Kind of Funny, like that's all fantastic. But honestly, in an hour I'll be like, well, that was cool, and then I'll go on about my life. I'm not
Right.
going to sit here and be like, everybody, I talked to Greg Miller today. It was fantastic. Okay, actually I will, but after
I was going
today.
to say, please actually
Yeah,
do
okay.
tweet that.
Yeah,
Put
yeah.
that on Facebook and stuff. Yeah, yeah.
Maybe like one time. No,
Wait for
but
the link and then put it up.
well, it's great for the moment, but what I'm really wanting to do is, show people with disabilities that you can go out there and you can do it. That it's not something that is unachievable. Because when I was young, there was nobody on TV, there was nobody winning awards. There were no shows like this to show anybody with a disability even existed. There was Stephen Hawking. That's it. And if you've ever been in a wheelchair or disabled, you have been compared to that man at least one time. So so there's a lot of us out there, and I hope that by being in the spotlight, it'll help. And I owe a lot of that, believe it or not, is as quote unquote profound as I try to be on Twitter. It actually took my friend Craig kind of pulling me aside. We were at a hotel, and he was like, you're really good at telling the world how good to be, and people listen to you, but you never talk about yourself. You never talk about your struggles. You never talk about what it is that you go through. Why don't you talk about it? And I really had to be like, I'm scared. I'm afraid that if people see what I actually go through, they're somehow not going to be interested anymore.
Oh my God.
But
I think that's the exact opposite, right? Is that what you found?
so far, yeah. Just being a Twitch streamer, I found that of course, there are trolls, and there are some funny trolls along the way. But no more so than in real life. Those where people are welcoming, they're awesome. They're very personable. They want to get to know your story, and I think, like we all know, especially in your business, people either like your personality or they don't, right?
Right.
And so, am I sad that I'm not as big as the 30,000 streamer people, viewer streamer people? Maybe. That'd be amazing, but at the same time, I feel like I'm slowly finding the people that are interested in my story, and hopefully that'll give them a better perspective to make friends with people who are in my situation.
No, 100%. Yeah. And again, I think that's what it's all about, and why I think it is so important for you to share your struggles and your stories and your ups and your downs and everything else. Cause I think, again, like the reason you were talking earlier, right, about like I'm going to get it wrong, toxic sensitivity,
Toxic sympathy.
sympathy. It's garnered by that. If you are so protected and like people don't know how to interact, their first thing is to think of how bad it is, right, and not to think about like No, you're living your life. You're doing your thing. You're playing your games. You're making your bad jokes. You're trying to steal my Oreo sponsorships, and I won't have that.
I
You know
don't
what I
know about
mean? People,
trying, but yeah.
you're not gonna do it, dude. Don't try. All right, go for Nutter Butters. Nobody wants those. That could be your thing. Find something that could be your thing, Steven.
Call me Oreo. What? Good. Sorry.
No. It's just, I think it's what's so important about it and the way you do it. And I think, yeah, I love the fact that you've done it by going through games, and that's how you found your way into so many people's lives to then open up even more. Because we talk about it all the time of like, you know, when subtitles are now a big conversation in games that they're not big enough, right? And that's, you know, I talked to Steve Saylor, the blind gamer, and he'll talk about that. And it's all these different things of going back and forth and how accessibility is such a big part of gaming now. But it is because people are championing it and talking about it in a way I never thought of. I never thought, you know, until I think in Beyond, maybe the first deaf gamer, first person who was enjoying our content who was deaf, or at least struggled with hearing, wrote in and was like, subtitles aren't there, like, so you for them, their idea isn't for me that you can talk to your friends during it or catch up with it on mute. It's like my life is on mute. I want to play games. I enjoy games the same way you enjoy games, and when I can't enjoy that aspect of it, the game is hindered by it. And it was like, oh man, I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, imagine that you're not able to play the not only the way that you'd like to play, but the way that you have to play. I mean, really, that's what it comes down to, you know? So you can play in 20 different ways, but maybe somebody can only play one. And that one avenue is blocked off by a simple thing that a developer could have changed. And, you know, so you know, video games are amazing in that they allow us to connect to each other better. You know, something I don't talk about on podcasts very often, actually, I'm not sure I ever have, is, you know, the reason I got into this was because I had experienced firsthand that video games were giving me opportunities that I may not have otherwise had. So when I was in high school, I, you know, hadn't gone through and done the dating scene, and, you know, that was intimidating for me. And even though I would learn years later that in fact there were some of the girls who were interested in me that I wouldn't know until years later, I didn't have that confidence. I didn't have that ability to recognize it because I'm in a wheelchair. Who's going to want me? And that was my mindset because there was nobody out there reassuring me that, no, you can. Just because you're in a wheelchair, who cares? But there was nobody out there saying that at the time, right? The only time I saw a person in a wheelchair was on a Scooby Doo commercial, and there was always a villain being a bad guy with a really bad mask. So, you know, there was no positive influences. And I discovered that video games could give that to me. So I met a wonderful woman in a video game, and we had a 3-year relationship that was not just in game. She came to me states away, and we had, you know, a fantastic 3 years. And although that didn't work out, I wouldn't have traded it for a world, because in the end, we didn't break up because of my disability. We broke up because of normal, everyday things. And
you're an asshole.
you know, yeah, I'm an asshole, exactly. So I was like, I need Oreos, and she's like, I can't do Oreos, Steve. So honestly, if they don't pay us,
Give me this woman's number because I'm going to get her on the campaign to stop you.
At this point, if they don't pay us for the amount of times I said Oreos, you know, but what's amazing is just that video games can be this equal opportunity. You know, people think, you know, video games are great, you can play with one another, but no, they manage to open up worlds. You know, if you have a mind that's willing and a body that's unable, video games can be a window into an otherwise inaccessible world.
So talk to me about where that journey with games starts, because you're talking about, you know, you're in your late 30s. We're talking about, you know, the ADA and how it changed everything, but the fact that it was bad in the 80s. How do video games get instilled with you and become part of your life at a time where people are saying like, well, you can't do that, you shouldn't do that?
It was honestly thanks to a dollar store, and my mom happened to find an Atari console that was, you know, old and out of dated. And I was super poor growing up, so it was all we could afford. And it was like, you know, for $10, here's an Atari and like 30 games. And you know, by this time Nintendo was out and all that, and it was super ancient. But you know, it was new to me, so bringing that tennis game and, you know, Pong and whatnot was amazing for me. I could push the buttons. I couldn't operate a regular controller. Even then, my hands wouldn't operate on the giant joystick. But we found a trackball, and trackballs are great because they're just round. Back then, they were round, large marbles that sat in the middle of almost like a Switch controller, and you just moved your thumbs to move this giant ball around, and that was your D-pad. And I was able to do that. So I could play video games. I could play Wheel of Fortune with my grandma and stuff like that. And it allowed me to know not only that video games were out there, but that they were accessible. And then it was just a matter of trying to keep up with them as they evolved. And also as my disability continued to evolve, because I have a disability that changes. You've known me for 6 years now. I don't even have the same ability as I did when we met, and I won't 6 years from now. So it's a matter of trying to keep up the space age technology with what you can do as a person.
So how hard has that been? Because we're talking about, an Atari with a trackball and playing that
Yeah,
way.
yeah,
Obviously, games have gotten so much more complicated. And
yeah.
again, because of your own work on the
Yeah.
Xbox adaptive controller, I think there's a lot of differences now. But like, is there a period in there where you can't play anything?
There's always a scary period where people can't play anything, and for me, it was a matter of slowly keeping up. So Nintendo was easy because I could just lay the controller down on a table and play it like a piano, not having to
Sure.
lift up my arms. It was great. Sega, same way, just 3 buttons. That was still okay. And then they went to the N64, where only aliens with 4 arms could play it easily. That was super hard. But at least I wasn't alone in that, because everybody felt that way.
Sure.
So, it ended up being slowly but surely keeping up with consoles. And then after the N64, I couldn't keep up with it anymore. So I went to PC gaming. And, thanks to adapters and makers and people who are way smarter than me with engineering degrees making controllers, I can keep up and play now. But there's some things that technology can't always help. For example, with SMA, if you hold your hand up and you just imagine your pointer finger just randomly clicking by itself,
Mhm.
that's something that I have to deal with. There are times where I'm going to use the mouse and I just randomly click the mouse. There's nothing I can do to stop it. My brain decides that it feels the muscles dying and it's trying to stop it, so it's trying to move it, and it clicks. And you're in the middle of a shooting game and you shoot your team accidentally, and that's 90% of the time true. Sometimes I just shoot the teammate for the fun of it, but
Who doesn't? Yeah.
right, yeah.
Andy
But,
sucks. Nick and Greg rule. Yeah.
and it's one of those things where you do what you can. You play to the best of your ability. And one of the things that Ablegamers and myself have both always said is, not everybody's going to be able to play everything. If you have a disability, there's
Sure.
there's no point of anything where anybody with any common sense is saying you can play any game you want ever. We're just saying that there are ways that you can play games. Period. It's not out of your realm of possibility. And honestly, before we started going out there and trumpeting that message, there was nobody out there saying that. And it was mind boggling to me, not only for when I got into video games, just, why am I the one that's only like, no, this can happen. You can do it this way. But disabled people in general are ingenuitive as heck. We are some of the most MacGyvers of this world. My mom taught me when I lost my ability to use my biceps that I could eat potato chips with a pair of grilling tongs. You know, the big fat ones you pick
Oh
up
yeah.
hot dogs with? You can pick
Yeah.
up a potato chip and you can eat it right from the table just by twisting your wrist. And that was the most ingenious thing ever. And, it's just a matter of finding a different way. So, yeah, there's no stopping you if you can just figure out how to do it.
I want to pick when we come back. I want to go backwards, right? And I want to talk about
Nope, only
your
forwards.
early
Let's go.
life here and all this stuff and go for it from that. But before then, I do have to say, of course, this is We Have Cool Friends. Ladies and gentlemen, each and every week we come to you with a cool friend. It's irregularly scheduled programming. Sometimes you get 2, sometimes you get 0. Who knows what's going to happen? Of course, you can go to patreon.com/kindafunny. You can give us your questions, comments, concerns for the guests there. You can get the show ad-free there. You, of course, can just support us and take care of us over there. But if you have no bucks tossed our way, it's no big deal. You can watch live as we record it on twitch.tv/kindafunnygames. You can get it later on youtube.com/kindafunny. You can get it on podcast services around the globe. No matter where you're getting it, please like, subscribe, share, leave an iTunes review. It all helps people find it. Of course, thank you to our Patreon producers, Mohammed, aka Momo, Justin Toft, Das Bear Jew, Blackjack, Jarrett Brown. We're sponsored today by Hymns and Honey, but I'll tell you about that later. Steven, you've talked about you were raised poor, that your disability has changed over time.
Mhm.
So when you're born,
Mhm.
is it immediately? I mean, are doctors like, wait a second, we think something's going on here, or is that something that comes out over time?
Yeah, if you're born with SMA, it's such a wild card because there's 3 different kinds of SMA, and now they think there may be up to 40, and they
Jeez.
all have different progress levels. So, I was born and I never crawled, so I could never stand on my own 2 feet and crawl, and my mom realized, like, "Huh, that's weird. By this many months old, he should definitely be attempting to crawl, but the only way I would move is by army crawling, putting my elbows down and planting and pulling forward."
Sure.
And my own brain at 9 months old figured out how to do that because brains are amazing in that they'll figure out how to compensate for what you don't have.
Sure. Adapt, right?
Adapt and overcome, and that's just the human trait, right? So we were able to figure it out that I had SMA simply by what I couldn't do, and they do a muscle biopsy, and they look at your proteins, and what the disease essentially is that my body doesn't make protein. The only way I get protein is by eating meat. So, and
A
other
great way to
protein
get it.
substances. Yeah, absolutely. Listen, wings are great. In case you never heard about them, wings are great.
Don't try to take that from me either.
Oh, taking it. So if you only have one way of getting a nutrient, that's just what you got. But your muscles don't develop the right way. So, and if you've ever met someone with SMA, myself, Shane Burkaw, any of the other famous people with SMA, which is like there's 4 of us. Just and no, we don't all meet for coffee. We meet for hot cocoa. So we're smaller. We're if you stretched out our spinal columns, we're an average 5'10" or whatever the American height is. But to see us in person is closer to 5 foot because your spine is held up by your muscles, so you're kind of compacted a little bit. And that's why you get the comments of, "Man, dude, looks like a balloon," or whatever other toxic blah 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 you hear along the way.
Sure.
And it's the frustrating part about those comments is always the same as it is with race relations or anything else. It's like, this is the way I was born. You have to accept it, or just get the fuck out. So at the end of the day, we're talking about a disorder, and that's just what it is. But so for me, learning early on was just a matter of figuring out how to do things the best way I could, and again, adapting and using weird technology like my grandma. So diabetics, if you're say a double amputee, my grandma was double amputee. She couldn't walk from the knee down. She was completely amputated. So she used the regular wheelchair. She had something that they call grabbers, and grabbers are like, think about scissors, but they have giant rubber pallets on the end of them, so they don't cut. They just grab things.
Sure.
So my grandma taught me that a great way to get the attention of my cat was to use these giant grabbers she would use to pick up shoes or other objects that are mundane, and I could pet the cat, and that would get the idea of the cat be like, "Hey, you want my attention?" And they come up and hang out with me. And it's weird how I couldn't use my arm to reach an animal, but I could use this tool that's not meant for anything close to that, and you repurpose it, and it works.
So you mentioned the dollar store that you were raised poor.
Yeah.
Is this like when this happens and you're born and they discover that you have SMA? Does your mom have insurance? Is that something that's happening, or there's no GoFundMe back then and stuff like that?
No, she did the best she could with the state funding, and state funding was like, well, we'll keep them alive for you. I mean, there's not. There, there was things I could have done along the way. There's something called a stander, which is literally a cushioned surface that is as tall as a human, and you basically put yourself on it, and you strap the back of your legs and your torso, so that helps you get used to gravity, right? So you can
Sure.
stand up. But I couldn't afford anything like that. We could barely get the insurance to approve a wheelchair. Even when I was busy army crawling around the house, they were just like, "Does he really need it?"
He looks fine to me.
Yeah,
He can get from the place to
it's
place.
fine. I mean, and things like that haven't even gotten necessarily better. Where every year, and I'm not even joking, you've seen me tweeting about this. Every year, the government comes to me and says, "Are you still really disabled? Are you sure?
You're
Maybe
faking
we
it.
should cut your funding." Yeah. Are you faking? Yeah. Have you gone through all these years and actually you've been able-bodied the whole time? And and I have to be careful because I have that sarcastic personality. So every once in a while I'll be like, "Nope, I'm the greatest actor ever. I've been method acting like Wesley Snipes from the beginning. Turns out I really just like being in a wheelchair." And they'll be like, "Oh, so you're not actually in?" No, I'm
No, I'm
joking.
not.
No, I actually.
I'm very,
Yeah,
very serious about this.
yeah. So yeah, it's unfortunately society in general just still not as accepting as you would hope. But yeah, the government. man.
Even worse.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned as well earlier that this is a terminal illness.
Yeah.
What is the? I mean, did they give you a projection, or did they give your mom a projection when you
Oh yeah,
were born?
I was gonna be dead by 2 years old, and then 3, and then they moved it to 5, and then 7, and then 9, and then 13, and then in her late high school they told me I wouldn't make it through college, and now after I have a bachelor's degree, I should be dead like I don't know by 3:15 or so. So yeah, so especially in this climate, like I mean, again, these are some kind of dark jokes, but also for those of you who are out there dealing with scary times right now, this is not super scary for me. I've continued to beat the odds. I continue to beat the odds. Lots of people I know have continued to beat the odds, and we will continue, and so will you. You will, the odds are against us a little bit right now. We will prevail, and there are people who are in danger, of course, today and every day. But at the end of the day, you have to remind yourself that just because someone says that your time is almost up doesn't necessarily mean it is. Just keep going, keep living.
Yeah, you were when the coronavirus stuff first started, one
Yep.
of the first people I saw tweeting of like, "Hey, yeah, I get what's going on, but like remember that like I'm the one who's like really at risk for this. Like I have the weakened immune system. I'm the one who's in trouble. Like leave the supplies and do all this because like wasn't
Yeah.
it your nurse was running out of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, early on we identified that some of our supplies were running low and going to be low. For example, in order to get what's called suctioning, which is basically pulling the mucus out of your throat. When you clear your throat or whatever,
Uh-huh.
someone with a trait can't do that because you don't have, like, there's a tube in the way, right? So you have to get that stuff pulled out with a little machine. And you have, in order to do that, if you are touching the Cheeto bag, and then you put something down your throat, you're gonna get Cheeto dust in your lungs. I don't know if you're a doctor, Greg, but that's not good.
That doesn't sound
Um,
recommended.
no, no, it's in the package. It says right there, don't do it. So you're gonna use hand sanitizer if you have to in a hurry. If someone can't wait, lots of people on Twitter are like, well, just wash your hands. It's like, well, okay, what if the person is dying? What if they're literally running out of air? They're gasping. They can't breathe. The person doesn't have time to run to the sink, wash their hands for 20 seconds, like you all should be doing, and get back. You got to use hand sanitizer. So I was putting the word out there, like and sort of making light of it because I know Twitter. You have to make a sarcastic joke to get something to go viral
Sure.
about why are we using antibacterial hand sanitizer to fight a virus? There's better ways, like cover your mouth, wash your hands. You don't have to buy up all the stuff.
Yeah.
And it went pretty far and it got lots of people's attention. And I hope that it got at least some people to stop hoarding medicine and hoarding the sanitizer because there are people who need it. And did they listen? I don't know. I sure hope my tweet gets heard by at least like one person.
Yeah. I also enjoyed in the coronavirus appreciation post here for Steve tweets, the one where you were like talking about how long you've gone without touching your face.
That's right, baby. I am up to the 9,723 days. Woo!
Yeah, you see,
Champion.
you're not getting it. You don't have to worry about it that way, not at
No,
all.
are you kidding? I am currently beating the crap out all y'all. As a matter of fact, I want a golden belt. Like, why do I not have Mr. Why do I not have from either you or Austin? Why am I not getting a belt? Why do I not have my own
You want a championship belt?
championship of not touching face? I want it like a hand with like a cross and a circle through it, like
Sure,
Cena
just the
style. Like,
Ghostbuster
yeah,
symbol with the hand in it.
Ghostbusters. Yeah,
Exactly.
yep.
Totally,
I forgot who I was talking to. Yeah,
Come on,
Ghostbuster style.
that's
Yeah,
my. You're
sorry.
gonna try
Yep,
to take
that
that
is your
from me
thing.
too.
Yep. No, I'm sticking with the Oreos for now. I took
That's
DiGiorno. I'm pretty good with that.
okay. First off, DiGiorno is in an open relationship with everyone on Twitch.
Wow.
No one's locking them down.
What? Wow, I'm learning all kinds of things today.
Sorry,
I'm
I hate to break it
heartbroken.
to you. I hate to break it to you.
You are killing me today. Come on. Um,
So when we're going through this chronological order of your life and all
yeah.
this stuff, and everybody's telling you you're gonna die, and you're like, I don't think so.
Yep.
What did you go to college for?
I went to college for visual communications,
Okay.
but that was only because I couldn't get into my field of choice. I always wanted to be the guy who draws the stuff in the background of video games. I wanted to be
Oh,
a
okay.
background artist. I have a super fascination for especially the older stuff. Now we have 3D engines and Unity and blah blah blah, but it's all done by algorithm. But back then you had to draw your Street Fighter backgrounds and whatnot, and I was really in love with that. Like, how cool would that be to just draw buildings and stuff and make characters walk across it? I thought that was so cool.
So when you said you had to obviously give up on that because you couldn't do it
Yeah.
earlier in your life, could you?
I could. I was somebody who was into drawing. I was into drawing. I was heavily into doing arts and crafts. So there's actually in my house, I have several tigers and polar bears that I painted myself back when my arms would work. I love animals. I love big cats. Polar bears have always been one of my favorites, and I like any young kid. I like big fuzzy animals. But I always found fun to do things with your hands. Another kind of funny first, I guess. I always wanted to be a glass blower. That was my dream job.
Really?
Still is. Yeah. If I could trade in the disability, I would trade in the fame, every follower I have. Sorry, DiGiorno. But I would trade it all to just go make glass and have that old time smithy medieval life. Like I think I missed my calling or my century in that. So
Yeah, just a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
So when you can't do that stuff, how hard is that to accept? Like, because you are the guy that is going to do the thing. You know what I mean? Like, you are the guy that's you see what you want to do and you go do it. But to be able to do something and then lose that ability.
Yeah. So there's a concept that a friend of mine introduced me to, Delilah. She calls it wanting to want to be a rock star. And it's a super concept that says essentially when you think about what you want to do in life, right? You decided you wanted to be in the video games industry. You decided that you wanted to be a host and a podcaster. You decided that getting up at 5 a.m. to do all the background stuff and emails is worth it. You decided that staying up late night and barely pulling together relationships was worth it because this was the goal that you wanted, right? But what if you really want to be a rock star? Do you want to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning after going to bed at 1 o'clock in the morning every day? Do you want to play in the houses that only have 10 people for 3 years in order to get to the stage that has 50 people? Are you willing to do that? Or do you just want to be on the big stage with 10,000 million people watching you, throwing their panties on stage and being like, "Oh, Craig, you're amazing." You probably want that part, right? The end of the
course, yeah. Who doesn't? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But do you want to do the beginning part? And that's something that I've always tried to carry with me is, what do I really want in this life? So I don't necessarily I would love to do things with my hands. That'd be great. But who knows? Maybe my brain tells me that because I can't use my hands, right? We always want what we can't have. So maybe that's why I'm interested. And maybe I'd get next to the heat and I'd be like, gosh, this sucks. I'm not doing this. But
you traded it all in.
Right? Too late. I traded it now. Unsigned that devil's contract. When I thought about what I wanted to do, I decided that I wanted to help people. And again, this goes back to the terminal illness thing. I'm aware of how short our lives are, but also how long they are. And it's constantly on my mind. And so it's sort of why I've been kind of trying to put that on there on Twitter in the current state of things where everybody's currently sort of thinking about this. And yet you get lots of people who are like, well, I don't really want to think about my mortality. Let's not talk about that right now. Well, okay, but we're all thinking about it all of a sudden, right?
Yeah.
So what is it you really want to do? And what I've been really trying to encourage people is when you're fearing for your life, when you're thinking about, man, I didn't have time to do X, Y, and Z, those things that you're thinking, those are the things you wish you would have done. You should have focused on those. But it's not too late. You still can. If you find yourself in the middle of this and you're at your cubicle job going, man, I wish I was a writer. Why did I not just write that blog? Well, what's stopping you right now? Why are you not doing it right this second? And it sounds like such common sense that it shouldn't have to be even said. But we live in such a society that does not believe in the grind. We don't believe in the beginning part. We believe in the end.
Sure.
Like
the overnight success that took 10 years.
Exactly. 1000%. That is exactly what it is. Oh man, where did that person come from? They just wrote this novel and it was published and it was now we talk about Harry Potter. Well, actually she had been trying for years and that was her 95th novel and Zynga published like 43 games before they got Farmville and they almost went bankrupt. There's all kinds of stories, and we tend to not focus on that. But for me, what I'm always thinking of, what do I actually want to do? Can I do glass blowing? No. Can I be a Greg Miller and fly from state to state to state to thing? No, I would love to come after Greg's job because I love his job. I think he's got one of the dream jobs on the planet. But I can't. It's not in my wheelhouse. Not something I'm capable of. And I'd encourage people who are listening who are in the same spot. They love to do what Greg does, even what I do. You'd love to do what I do with a nonprofit and lead it, and have amazing coworkers every day. Like, you may not be able to have that position in life, but what else do you want to do? What is it that you'd like to do? And that's what I try to tell people is what's in your realm of possibility that you actually want to do.
So you graduate with your degree.
Yep.
You go to work right away. Where do you go to work?
I don't, because the government doesn't let you work and be on disability. So even today, I'm a volunteer at Ablegamers, technically.
Gotcha.
So there's very strict stipulations on the American government. Believes that if you are disabled and you need the public help, then you don't work. And if you try to work, then they kick you off the system. So without taking up the rest of the hour or whatever we got left, here's the cycle that I get into.
You got as long as you want, brother. Don't worry about it.
All right, 6-hour TED Talk. Here we go. So here's the way it is with the government, and feel free to look this up. It's kind of crappy, right? This is the government we live in. Okay, I'm disabled. I need nurses in order to get out of bed, to not stink when I meet someone, get a bath, to get up in my wheelchair. I need all of that, right? I need help. If I get a job that I just got out of bed to go get, then the state says, okay, well, you have a job, so you're a productive member of society, so you don't actually need our help. And I go, well, no, I need the nurses. They're like, nope, sorry, if you're working, you're not disabled enough to need nurses. So we're going to take away your nurses. So then you lose your nurses. And then as soon as you lose your nurses, you can't show up at your job and you sell your job. Well, yeah, can you pay for the nurses? Because the state stopped paying for those and I can't go to work without them. And they go, yeah, no, that's not on us. You have to get your own nurses. Also, if you don't show up tomorrow, you're fired. So 2 days later, you go, well, I don't have a job now or nurses. So you go to apply for your nurses again. And then they give them back because you're not working. And then they tell you, hey, but you can only earn this amount of money. And if you want to go get a job, then you're going to lose your nurses again. And the cycle continues. So you get a job, you lose your nurses, you lose your nurses, you lose your job, you lose your job. They tell you to get back in the workforce. So they give you nurses to get back in the workforce. And then you lose them again. It's super fun.
See, it seems like I would want you in the workforce contributing money to the taxes, taking care of yourself, and lessening the burden on the taxpayer rather than just having the taxpayer cover it all the time.
Yep.
Huh, that's a weird one.
That is something that the disability community has been ringing the bell for years. There are so many of us that are just like, just let us pay taxes and hold down a job. And honestly, it's not about the money. It's literally about just the benefit of having a caretaker with you. If I go to my job and all of a sudden I need to get suctioned or a piece of my tubing comes apart, I'm not gonna be able to go to my boss and be like, "Hey, can you put this together real quick?" He's gonna be like, "Ah,
yeah, can I get an assist over here? I'm dying."
Yeah, on the floor now. So yeah, it's the way our backward society works. If they would let people with disabilities continue benefits like your medical insurance, that obviously it takes more per year to keep me alive.
Sure.
But if they would let us, we would be able to contribute more than our worth back. But we're often held in poverty because they're afraid of the couple of people that will defraud the government. Now I'm not making fun of that. Yeah, some people are bad. Some people are bad actors, and they will try to get over on life if they possibly can. But I shouldn't be penalized because of those people.
100%. That's bullshit.
Yep.
Did you know? I assume you knew this going in, or when you got out of college, you were like, "I'm gonna get a job."
That's exactly what it was. It was I was going to school. I was getting. As a matter of fact, they have programs for people with disabilities that sort of lead you in past the stigma, past all the barriers. They're like, hey, you could get a job over here. And I worked at the Human Engineering Research Laboratory in Pittsburgh, where they make wheelchairs and come up with new innovations in technology that works with Carnegie Mellon University and some of the brightest minds on the planet. And I was interning with them and doing the thing. And the moment I got out of high school, I was like, this is amazing. I'm going to do this full time. And they're like, fantastic. Also, we'll take away your Medicare. You'll have to pay for your ventilator. That's $75,000 a year. We're going to pay for your nurses. That's $125,000 a year. Oh, by the way, all of your medicines, everything else, yeah, we're not paying for that either. So we're going to need you to figure out how to get about $350,000 per year. And if you want to live, that's like food and housing. You should probably figure that out too.
That's just the machinery to keep you alive, not the things you need, like a house or a car, or right? Yeah.
No, that's not my gold-plated glass elevator in the Wonka factory. That's that's just a machine to keep me breathing. So but Greg and I, we've gone back and forth about this before. I mean, I was telling you both in text and on Twitter about that new medicine that was coming out. That's 1.2 million just to keep you alive, and it's like, well, we will raise that for you. And I almost I was in tears when Greg was saying this because it's such a sweet gesture by a friend, and the best friends are so great. I believe you. I believe you could probably raise it for me if we had to. But also, I'm just one guy. Like, it shouldn't be like that for everybody. You can't raise 46 million times 1.2 million. That's not how money works.
Yeah.
So unless Elon Musk is in your contact roster, which I somehow doubt.
I mean, well, I could talk to McCaffrey, but I don't even know if that would be a direct connect as much as like maybe on Ride the Lightning, McCaffrey would have to talk about it. It's a long story, but yeah. But yeah, that's the whole fucking thing of the situation, right? Is like, I can't imagine. It seems so broken at so many turns for you in terms of navigating the government and programs and all this other bullshit.
Yeah, it's it's one of those things that so here's the thing about inspiration, right? There is a wonderful talk by a woman named Stella Young, and if you've heard of it or if anyone else has. So Stella Young is someone who also had SMA. She's an Australian, or she was an Australian. She passed on, but before she passed on, she did a great TED talk called "I Am Not Your Inspiration." And it's an entire TED talk about how you shouldn't look to people with disabilities as your inspiration because it's toxic. We're not here to inspire you to live your life because ours is hard. You should look to us because we're brilliant minds, we are engineers, we are philosophers, etc. That's why you should respect us, not because we get out of bed in the morning. And she's right. Although I do disagree in that you can be an inspiration in the right way. And that's sort of what I'm trying to forge. And what I've been privileged to have friends with platforms like you who kind of will push the light towards me and say, check out this guy, he's doing things. I don't want anybody to follow me on Twitch, on Twitter, anything, because I'm in a wheelchair, because I'm disabled. Right. I want you to follow me because what I'm saying makes sense to you. It clicks with you. My personality is something you like. I can offer you something. I can contribute to your life in some way. And, I believe personally that we all have that. We all have that ability. So, the system is broken, but again, people are super ingenuitive, right? They're super able to figure out their lives and how to go about it if you give them the tools to get there. So nobody tells you when you're 18 and disabled that the government's not going to let you have a job. They put you through school. They tell you to go to college. They think everything's going to be great. And they push you forward. They didn't give me a clue that these problems would be out there and waiting for me. They're just like sharks in the water outside a little tiny penguin pond. And honestly, it was super scary to finally realize that. On the flip side, just the Facebook thing. I know you've seen that where I was telling a story about how in high school, at the end of my high school, I got to it and they told me that I should go home and have fun before I die because I'm never going to be able to be a constructive, contributing member of society. So what's the point?
Great guidance counselor there.
Oh, amazing. Was super, super hope that person had a wonderful life. So, like Al Pacino says, the best revenge is revenge, right? So, my revenge was going out and living a good life and contributing. And I'd like to think along the way I've helped some people out that needed help, and I was there for them. And I
think it's pretty safe to say that's happened, Stephen. I think you've done that.
I hope so, man. I hope so. I don't want to presume anything, but I really do hope that people begin to realize that people in my situation can contribute ideas, and I don't want people to get it twisted either. Things like the Xbox adaptive controller, that was the work of Microsoft.
Just you.
And all me, 100% me. Come at me, Microsoft. Good. Don't. Just kidding. Yeah, it was Microsoft, and we were super happy to contribute. And my friend Craig, my coworker, a lot of the Ablegamers people got to help with that. But I was also in the room. I also contributed my own ideas, and I helped in my way. And that's just one project. And there are
Yeah.
so many people out there with disabilities that have contributed things that we don't even realize. And I just wish that society would kind of recognize that a little more than they do.
So when you graduate college, find out you can't work,
Yeah.
what do you do with that time? And is that what leads you to Able Gamers?
In a roundabout way, yeah, because I didn't do anything. I did literally nothing. So I graduated high school. I was super sad for a week or two, and some friends of mine had introduced me to the idea of Ultima Online and this second world that you could live in where you didn't have a disability and you could go be a knight with a sword and all this fun stuff. And
Sure.
so I played the hell out of some World of Warcraft, Ultima Online, Diablo, all the games that were in the late '90s. And I did nothing for 6 years. I did nothing, and it sounds great. And for anybody listening to, whenever I tell this story, people are like, "Yeah, whatever, Steve." It gets boring. You think that you want time. You think that you want unlimited time to play video games because you're tired, because life is exhausting, because having a parents or kids or siblings and friends, and it all takes it out of you, and you're like, man, I just wish I could sit on this couch and play Half-Life for the rest of my life. But you don't. If after 6 months you'd be like, really, again, all right, and then you do it because your friends are there, so like, all right, another year. Oh god, I have to get up today and play video games. And it's rough, right? Because, so I mean, I think actually you're a great person to talk to about this, right? So you do that. You get up every day, you play video games, but that's not all you do. You do
100%.
reports. You do background stuff. You do Excel sheets. You run a business. You have a wife. You have a family. You have other responsibilities. You're not just playing video games. What if I
Sure.
took all of that away and all you could do is play video games? How long do you think you'd last before you went insane playing one game?
Yeah. No, I don't know, dude. I
Yeah,
mean, look at how this work from home stuff's going. It's not.
yeah,
I'm
right.
losing it
Yeah,
already.
yeah, and that's just one of those things where people just think that they want it, but they don't. And so for me, when I got to 25, I realized that I wanted to go out and be productive and be a member of society. And I didn't care what the government was telling me anymore. I was going to figure out a way because I'm smart. I'll figure it out
Hell
somehow.
yeah.
There's got to be a way to contribute and not get money. And turns out, ta-da, there is ways. So, you know, I may not be, I'll never be rich and famous. I'm never going to own that glass elevator. But there reaches a point where earning money is not what you necessarily want to do with the world. Sure, money's great. Who doesn't want money? But at the same time, if that's cut off, you can find amazing other ways to get the value of who you are rather than just the numbers in your bank account. Once you have the minimum level, I have a roof over my head, I'm in a safe place, there's not roaches crawling over me, and I have food. If you can hit those minimum levels, I have the medication I need. Good. You've hit all the minimum requirements to live. Do you really, really, really need that money for that new bike? No. It'd be nice if you did, but can you live
Sure.
without it? Yeah, you can. And you can also go and you can have a good life and you can have friends and you can be a productive member of society. So, you know, it's hard. It's hard in our society to tell people that because nobody wants to hear it. I'm never going to get a TED talk talking about you don't really need money, ladies and gentlemen, and non-binary pals. You don't need this, and they're going to be like, "Yeah, get off the stage." So, but for me at least, it was true. It was where I found that I wanted to go back to school and I wanted to do something with my time other than just play games. I'm on
So
a gaming podcast saying that too. Really smart of me, I know, but
no, you're fine. Everybody understands exactly what you're saying, I think. Where does Able Gamer start with you?
it actually started by me not having the ability to keep playing for much longer. I was in the low levels of MLG playing Star Seas Tribes and sort of, doing well with getting kills, getting trained by this professional woman who was super amazingly good at the game. And we were starting to climb the ranks, and I was losing the ability to use a keyboard and a mouse. I could almost no longer do it anymore. And I figured that there had to be technology out there somewhere. And
Yeah.
I reached out to Mark at Ablegamers and was like, "Hey, I see you got this article here saying that you can not play World of Warcraft with just one hand. Well, I know, Mr. Barley. Yes, you can. You're wrong, sir. And haha, I'm amazing. You're bad. And instead of turning me away like the snot-nosed little kid that he should have, he was like, "Oh yeah, you can do better. Good, write it." So I did, and it exactly what I was talking about earlier. It helped one person, literally one person, reached out and said, "Hey, thanks for writing that because now I'm playing WoW, and that's pretty damn cool. Thanks." And it was as simple as that. And that interaction, my brain went, haha. So, I discovered that I liked how it felt, and I cared more about getting that feeling again of helping someone else rather than competing and being an esports pro back before esports was really a thing.
Right? Yeah, it was you and
Yeah.
Fatality.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, two of us, and that's it. So I had a real 50-50 shot. But I chose not that life, and I don't regret it for me at all. It was a great decision to just go out and figure out ways you could help people by telling them some firsthand experience, and then maybe there was someone else who hadn't figured out that solution yet.
So then, how long have you been with Ablegamers now?
Almost 15 years. Yeah,
Jeez
because
Louise, man.
they Ablegamers has been a nonprofit for 15 years. It was conceived as an idea 17 years ago. Um, I believe I'm getting those dates right. I'm very tired, so I maybe 13 to 15. But it's been that long that we've been a nonprofit, and you know, uh, my journey just started as a simple writer.
And then, how did it
Yeah,
evolve? Like, we just made this joke,
yeah,
right, about the 10-year
yeah,
overnight success,
yeah,
right? 15 years with them, and then you
yeah.
look at
Just
it now, and like
short
you're
15
a
years, right?
global citizen at the Game Awards. You're getting the South by Southwest award. Like,
Yeah.
you got Shane from The Walking Dead talking to you on the internet. Like, do you look back
Yeah.
at there being a turning point where suddenly everybody took it seriously, or everybody noticed, or something changed, or has it just been this gradual increase or climb?
It has been so there were two turning points for Able Gamers. It was when Rockstar ignored us at PAX East. So Mark and I went to the first PAX East, and we went to talk to Rockstar, ask them to be better. We had a little flyer that we were handing out to all the devs. No devs were talking to us at the time,
Uh-huh.
and we went to Rockstar and we went to go talk accessibility and how they could do it better. And the lead developer, which I won't name, the lead developer at the time, walked out and took our flyer, ignored me in the wheelchair, literally looked over my body and over my head at Mark, who's standing beside me, and took the piece of paper, thanked him for his time, walked away, and crumpled it up in his hand and threw it into the wastebasket right in front of us.
It's like out
And
of
then
a
went back.
movie.
Yep, it was out of a movie, 100%, and threw it away right in front of us. And we
Jeez.
were just like, "What the hell just happened?" And so, fortunately, I've always loved social media, and Mark and I immediately were like, "This is going on social media." And Twitter did what Twitter does, and Mark got a phone call at like 11:59 from the top dog at 2K saying, "Hey, what's going on?" And from there we ended up being friends with Rockstar. They invited us out. Met some amazing people over there. I got to see they were doing LA Noir at the time.
Yeah.
So they were actually gold plating the disc that day that we were out there, but they took their time out to talk to us, and we gave them some tips and tricks, and they were very nice, very helpful. In fact, one guy ran and got his super, and you're gonna know what I'm talking about here. They got the super handheld version of the game before it's officially a game,
Yeah.
and brought it. I was like, "Here's what Max Payne 3 is gonna be like. Check it out. What do you think we should do better?" And like just literally hand holding it in front of my face, and like, "This is what it's gonna be. Check it out." He was so happy, and it was amazing, and we were able to give some tips and tricks to them for that. And then from there, the industry started paying attention, but it took that going to shows and being face to face. And actually, you and Callie were talking about this on your episode just on Monday about how emails are great, but it doesn't replace face to face time.
Sure.
And if you're someone with a disability who can't travel like I can't, getting that face to face time is super hard. It's very, very hard. And I know so many people feel this way about just getting that time with people in the industry. It's hard because everybody's busy, right? All the time.
Sure. Sure.
So how do you get that face to face time? And it for us, the answer was to be positive and make friends. my friend Craig and I launched Operation Make Friends, and we just made as many friends as we could. We didn't talk negatively. We didn't, badger anyone. We didn't make anyone feel bad for not having accessibility options. We were just like, hey, we're here, and we'd like to try to help you out if you can, and this would be great. And sometime along the way of helping Ablegamers, I sort of ended up developing my own personality out of it. I ended up becoming louder and the sort of the big mouth of the organization. I went to war several times with some big names over stupid things that they had done, and that got me attention. But my stance in life has always been, if you do something wrong, I'm gonna call you out on it, and I'll do so publicly. But I don't want you to be shamed. I want you to learn. I want you to learn why this was bad, why you hurt people with what you did, and you can do better. I don't hate you. I mean, I'm friends with most of the people that I've ever called out on Twitter because I'm not trying to make enemies. I'm trying to tell people how to do better, how to respect people's times and who they are. And I feel like if you're an educator rather than a shamer, I feel like you'll do much better in life.
100%, dude. I mean, that's why we're friends, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's so easy to, especially in our cancel culture, you know what I mean? That you flame somebody on Twitter and that's the end of it. And they're a horrible person and it's black and white and it's binary. It's yes, no. And then it's over and you move on. And that doesn't help at all. Right. And like I always talk about it. I've talked about it on other shows before, not this episode, because this is us right now. But like, for me, when you called me after that Paxomania where I did the wheelchair bit and you hit me up on email, and then we got on the phone about it, and you were like, what happened? And I explained it all to you. And I so took for granted that it's wrestling. I'm a heel. I'm a bad guy. Everyone will get what I'm going for.
Yeah.
And that was not the case for the people who were in that room in the back that went and told you at that PAX that Greg Miller's doing something horrible. And it was like, there was truth on both sides of it. And then it was finding that middle of like, wait a second, what actually happened? And I remember getting your email and being like, oh, really? And then getting on the phone and you explaining to me like, I get what you're saying. I understand this wrestling bit. You're a bad guy. Okay, I understand. But it didn't play to this one person who went and I was like, oh, shit. Like, I never thought that. And that's not who I am. I'm not out to hurt people.
And that not being out to hurt people is sort of something that I think sometimes we've forgotten in cancel culture. Yeah. It is we're so ready to just... Yes, the intent behind it. Now, sometimes there are bad people on Twitter. There are people who are leading you astray and people who are lying through their teeth or their keyboard, as case may be. And, they are trying to hurt people and gain for themselves. I'm not saying that there's not anybody out there, but you can tell who means well and who does not. You could tell that Greg Miller, as I didn't know Greg, I knew that you were a fun person through friends of friends. I knew that you had tried, that you had tried to be a good person, but you enjoyed being the heel. You enjoyed being, the rock with the shades. You enjoyed being the bad guy in a fictitious world, and so that was your character. But I also knew that what happened had hurt someone in the audience, and I knew that person talked to other people who were also hurt, and I knew that you wouldn't want to hurt anybody. Yeah. And and that's sort of what you just mentioned about there being two truths. I think somehow we've kind of lost that in society right now. We're kind of like, there is only one truth and that is it. Well, sometimes there can be two sides to a story. It's not all about that one. So.
No, and that is what I think is lost so often now is that you don't even worry about the intent. It is that somebody breaks out, and I'm using our own the times I fuck up all the time, which happens all the time. But breaking out something I said in a podcast without the context and putting it onto a message board, and then it's like, oh yeah, this guy does suck, and it's like, well, that wasn't the point I was making. Clearly, there's a million things going on behind it, but it is that for so many people that it's a yes, no. Everybody's on the line, and as soon as they go one way or the other, and why I think the way you handle it and the way you deal with it, where it is that you understand people aren't probably out to do this, that there is this, hey, I can educate and I can talk to you and make you understand a perspective you've never thought of or never had to deal with. That's so powerful. And that's lost all the time. And I feel like, we talked about earlier of like, touching your shoulder, saying, hey, or whatever. And like the amount of times like you figure that you've seen somebody on Reddit for fails or whatever, like go to shake somebody's hand who can't move their hand, right? And it's like, that's the bit, that's the thing. And so everybody gets it in their head to be all gun shy and they can't make a mistake and they can't say the wrong thing and they'll tiptoe around every word and every interaction, blah, blah, blah. And it's like the reason like you stand out, I think, and you do inspire me isn't because I think you're faking it in this chair and letting it, you're just lazy. It's the fact that you are out to educate people. You're right. You're out to educate people, and you're out to do it the right way, and you're out to be a level-headed person and have a conversation and understand that, like, when people make those mistakes, that's just what that is. It's a mistake. It's not an attack.
It's amazing how many people have forgotten the redemption arc. It's amazing how people have forgotten that not ever, because we live in some polarizing times. And again, there are some bad people who do not have good intentions. They want to take advantage of you. They want your money. They want your vote. They want your whatever. And I'm not defending those people at all. I'm saying those people that honestly have lost their way. If someone missteps and you have the spoons, again, if you have the spoons to correct them, take the time to correct them. If your friend makes a racist joke, don't just cut them out of your life. Tell them why that was wrong. Explain to them. If they keep doing it, well, then you may have to escalate the situation. Yeah. Then they're willingly hurting people. But give someone the benefit of the doubt. Now, again, the problem with these kind of talks and preparation and motivational speeches is you always have people who are like, well, this person did this really bad thing. You're defending them. No, I'm not. I will never defend someone who did something egregious. But somebody who did something unknowingly, you got to give them a chance to learn and to grow as a person. And that's not always a popular opinion nowadays. We really do live in a world where people would rather just be like, yep, I knew they were always an asshole. Cancel. Yep. And I would rather see people learn. Another example is, I'm not going to name names, but a streamer who has 200,000 Twitter followers, thousands of people online, friends with all the big streamers. His wife is a big streamer. That narrows it down some. Said something silly on Twitter. Basically talking about how, if you're a blind gamer, you can never play because they don't make adaptations for blind people. So like that. And I was like, Braille, have you ever heard about it? And it says a quote tweet, and it started a war because then he called me an asshole, and I was like, well, I'm not an asshole. You're just not being sensitive right now. And then his fans got involved, and my fans got involved, and it had to be one of those things where it was a small 2-hour war on Twitter. But at the end of it, it was us talking on Discord and being like, hey, dude, I know you weren't trying to be an ass, but also, like, you're making fun of blind gamers. That's not cool. Like, I understand your point was to say that developers shouldn't get away from their principles, but you're doing it wrong and you're hurting people in the way. And he's like, oh, I didn't mean to hurt people. I was just trying to be funny on Twitter. I'm like, I know, but that's not the way it came off, and it's amazing how when you get away from the 250 character limit of just sniping at each other and you have a conversation and you go, look, dude, you hurt people. It's amazing how most people will be like, shoot.
That wasn't my intention, right? Yeah.
No,
exactly.
I was calling you an asshole because you were attacking me. But I didn't want to hurt anybody. I'm like, yeah, I was being loud. I was telling you, and you can be mad at me for being loud at you. That's fine. But I got your attention, and now you understand. So,
I want to get over to the friend zone where the Kind of Funny best friends write in and ask you questions. But I had one more question for you. You had said you had another terminal illness. We've talked a lot about SMA. What's the other one?
I have scoliosis, and pretty bad scoliosis. It's actually it's like an S curve. So I got back surgery when I was younger. And so I have a metal rod in my back, but it's all held together by 1980s technology, which means there's a slinky in there somewhere. And
it's very harsh.
So, I mean, jokes aside, I'm either gonna what's gonna happen to me is I'm either going to not be able to breathe because my lungs are just gonna get too tired, or if I one day take a wrong move or something, the doctors tell me that where the wires are laying, if my back continues to crunch, it'll just snap and there'll be a metal bar that just essentially goes through my heart. Sort of in a Steve Irwin kind of style. Like it'll just one day it'll just happen, and so it's not a fun outcome. It's not something that anyone I like think about. I've tried talking to my friends sometimes to tell them like, hey, you remember, like, I'm not here forever, and you'll just see the tears in their eyes, and it's like, well.
Well, anyways, you want to go to this movie or not?
Yeah, right. Yeah, let's get off that subject. So that's what I was saying. I mean, at the end of the day, I think to me, there's a shot clock above my head, and it's ticking away. And my superpower in this world is that we all have those shot clocks. There's one above your head right now that none of us
Yeah.
can see. That
Yeah.
time is predetermined, and so is mine. But I know mine is there. I'm not necessarily sure you always remember yours are there, and that's not an attack on you. But I don't think we think about it as much as maybe we should. You don't think about it so much that you're fearful, but
Sure.
it's good to
Sure.
it's good to I've adopted this thing lately of saying that live like you're gonna die tomorrow and dream like you're gonna live forever.
It's very good. It's
Thank you.
very good.
It's like I put time into my words or something, you know?
I know. It's like it's like you talk about this stuff all the time.
What? Whatever.
How long did it take you to get to that point? Like, I mean, I understand this has been your entire existence, right? Of like, oh, you don't have long, so whatever, suck it up. But like, when were you just like, you know what, fuck it?
Yeah, I think when I got into my my late 20s, early 30s, I think that they say the male brain is done developing at 25. I think that sort of is what took me so long because when you're disabled and you're younger, man, people are always like, "You're so smart. You're wise beyond your years. You're already an adult, 8-year-old." And it's like, well, okay, and back then I was like, "Haha, I'm so smart." But in reality,
I love this. Keep telling me this
yeah,
praise.
yes, tell me I'm amazing. Yes. But in reality, you're just an 8-year-old with a disability. So yeah, maybe you've lived a little bit harsher life than a lot of people, but at the same time, it was a situation where I still had growing up to do. So in my late 20s, early 30s, I really started to figure out and develop that people don't appreciate the time they've got. People started to die that I had known from Ablegamers from disabilities.
Mm.
Um, we lost an amazing young man named Corey Kroll, who was an amazing young disabled person and had talked about aspirations. Actually, not to go on forever here, but
Your show, do what you want.
so he used a telegraph machine, literally the Titanic. Do 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 do. That's how he communicated on a keyboard. That's how he typed. That's how he played games. It was amazing, and he had figured out a way to continue to write stories, to write blogs, to do articles for Ablegamers, to communicate with me, and he figured out how to do this with just the dot dash system, and smart like no one I've ever met. And he passed away from his disability, but it took me by surprise because I wasn't expecting him to die. I thought he was going to live forever, and so did all of his caretakers. And one day, the disease just took him. And I was actually fighting with Mark at the time, and Mark called me in tears and told me the news, and it immediately squashed the argument. It was about something stupid like how many booths to put at PAX or something that so mundane, and it was just silly that we were even mad at each other over it, and it snapped everything into perspective. And uh, while I don't think we all need to lose someone to gain an appreciation for mortality, I do think that something has to happen in your life that gives you that final epiphany that's like, wow, this really isn't going to go on forever. And, then your brain just starts rationalizing it out. That, it's short but also long. There's a lot of time, but there's none, So yeah, I mean it's complex at the same time. Having that insight, I think if there's one gift that I in the end can share with the world, that'll be what it is. It'll be to give people that knowledge 5 years faster than they should have gotten it.
Steven, you're wise beyond your years.
Oh, thank you. Can I have a toy?
Well, because you're happy, man. Speaking of wise beyond your years, let me tell you about our sponsors. Let's talk about the people who make this show happen, like everyone on patreon.com/kindafunny, where you can get the show ad-free. However, if you're not there, you get to hear about our sponsors. We're going to start with Honey. Honey is online shopping made easy. If you didn't know, Honey's a free little widget you get and you put in your browser, and then when you go to check out on things, it pops up and the little dancing coins there, and it'll go and look for the best coupon code, and then it'll give you the best coupon code, and then it applies to your purchase. Honey is the free online shopping tool that saves you money online. It automatically finds you the best promo codes and applies them to your cart, which makes online shopping finally feel as easy as it's supposed to. Imagine you're shopping on one of your favorite sites, whether it be Target, Best Buy, Sephora, Macy's, etc. When you check out, little box drops down, you hit the button apply coupons, and a few seconds later, it scans, you get it, the prices drop. Been using it since Tim made me use it. Tim said we were going to get sponsored. This is a long time ago. Well, kind of funny. I was going to get sponsored by Honey, and I should try it, and I did, and it's amazing. And I'm, as you know, working from home, and there it is. I see the little Honey thing right there on my browser. It's set. It's ready for anything. Honey has found it's over 18 million members, over $2 billion in savings. Did you know Honey supports over 30,000 stores online, and they're adding more every day? Users love Honey. That's why it has over 100,000 plus 5-star reviews on Google Chrome. Not using Honey is literally passing up free money. It's free to use and installs in just 2 clicks. Get Honey for free and at joinhoney.com/morning. That's joinhoney.com/morning. Of course, it's in the description below. Up next, it's forhims.com. You've heard us talk about forhims.com for a long, long time, mainly about how Nick and Andy use it to work on their hair. They don't want to go bald. They use it there. But of course, Forhims is more than just that. Forhims.com is a one-stop shop for hair loss, skincare, and sexual wellness for men. 40% of men by the age of 40 struggle from not being able to get and maintain an erection. Why do guys turn to weird solutions or do nothing when they could turn to medicine and science? You can check out Hims, and you could discover the tiny pill worthy of big celebration. Hims connects you with real licensed doctors and FDA-approved pharmaceutical products to treat ED. Well-known generic equivalents to name brand prescriptions help you combat ED. These are prescription solutions backed by science, and they're made affordable. You can see results where other treatments fall short. You don't have to worry about, of course, an in-person doctor visit. Instead, you answer a few quick questions online about your medical history and then chat with a doctor for a confidential review. If approved by the doctor, the products are shipped directly to your door. Being your best self means performing your best. Try Hims today by starting out with a free online visit. Go to forhims.com/KFMS. That's FORHIMS.com/KFMS. Forhims.com/KFMS. Prescription products are subject to doctor's approval and require an online consultation with a physician who will see and determine if the prescription is appropriate for you. See the full website and see the full details on the website and the safety information. This could cost hundreds if you went in person to the doctor, office, or pharmacy. Remember, that's forhims.com/KFMS. Steven Spohn, you're now in the friend zone. We're going to start with Kind of Funny best friend Cameron Kennedy, who wrote in and said, as we head towards the next generation of consoles, what are some steps forward you are hoping to see in regards to accessibility? Any changes that you believe are absolute musts?
Okay, welcome to my TED Talk.
All right, there you go. That's another 20 minutes. I'm getting back.
All right, bye. I think that there are a lot of things that need to continue to be done. First of all, we need to understand that VR is not going anywhere, and it's not accessible in its current form. Although it is a dream that all of us nerds have. Who hasn't seen Star Trek, whether you like Star Wars more or not, who hasn't seen the holodeck, who hasn't seen that ability to work in VR and how amazing that would be, right? Yeah. So we all want that. You have to understand that for people with disabilities, in order for something like that to come true, you'd also have to somehow magically make the disability go away while you're in the VR. And that's not currently a thing. So if you have a headset on your head and you can barely hold your head up, maybe now you can't even hold your head up, but let's say you can, you now have to use 2 hands for 2 different glowing balls in your hand in order to wave them around for the VR machine to handle it. Well, how do you push yourself around in your wheelchair or spin around while you're holding 2 balls in your hand? You don't.
Sure.
Simple as that. So we have to figure out ways to allow for one-handed gaming. We have to allow for ways to move around in VR. We have to allow for ways that people can do things the way that they can do them. One of our first interactions was with Fantastic Contraptions, a wonderful game. If you've never played it, you literally build things with Lego blocks, pretty much, Lincoln Logs, and you put contraptions together and you push them out and see if they roll. Well, the very first thing that they did was make a tutorial where you had to crouch down on the ground. So if you were at one level, no matter how tall you were, they made it so no matter how tall you were, it just looked to see that you went a certain percentage down lower. Well, that's great, but if you're in a wheelchair, you're not crouching. That's as low as you're getting. So we had to talk them out of putting that in the tutorial. and it was a big, long conversation to get that out. The brilliant minds like Chris and Greg at Ablegamers are working on VRs, and Jesse is working on technology, and we're figuring out these things. We're going to figure out how VR works better, but it's going to take time. It's not going to be an overnight solution. It's going to be one of those overnight 10-year things, and one day we'll figure it out.
I
Until
know
then,
this.
good.
Sorry, I know this isn't like similar to when I was like, "Do you mind me touching you?" You're like, "Well, I don't." But there's a million. This isn't apples to apples every time. But what's the general response you have when people are talking about? I understand that, but it's not the creator's vision. You know what I mean? Like when we're talking about difficulty in game, right? When Sekiro was like, "Well, why can't you adjust this? Why can't you do that?" And people are like, "Well, Celeste gives me all these options," and they're like, "Well, that's Souls games. We want those to be difficult." Like, there's that argument of, like, I think it's so. If I years ago, I would totally have been locked in of like, "Oh yeah, totally, that's what they want to create." But then it's that idea of like, now I understand difficulty options aren't necessarily there just because you want an easier experience as whatever you want to plow through in just the story mode. They are there to open it up for accessibility. I think calling them difficulty settings in general is so obtuse, right? In the point of accessibility.
Absolutely true. Yeah, my great Sekiro argument that would take up another 3 podcasts. So the non-silliness of Steve answer is that I will always now refer to the Cory Barlog. Accessibility has never and will never compromise my vision as a game developer. I will grab that tweet and run around with a flag for the rest of my life.
Barlog.
I'm sorry, I know your nemesis, but
no, I love him so much.
That's not what you said in text. But anyway, so the great thing is that I have tons of data points from lots of developers like that. So do all of my coworkers. We all have our data points from developers saying, no, this isn't messing with our vision. We're just trying to make sure everybody can play. And there's one developer that doesn't necessarily want to adhere to us, but also that same developer that all the hardcore people were yelling at me on Twitter about, and how Sekiro is meant to be hardcore and that they'll never compromise their vision. They didn't shut off the mod that lets you be able to turn it to easy mode, which they easily could have done. What does that tell you? So, it's one of those things where people just they want to believe what they want to believe, and the same with VR. We're gonna have to come up with compromises, solutions, ways that we can make things accessible without compromising intent, ways that we can work around things. What I always like to say is it's like a ramp and a staircase. You can put a ramp beside a staircase, and we both can get to the house. Just because I'm doing it my way doesn't mean you can't do it yours.
Sure.
And the flip side
but
of
once
that,
we get in the house, I'm going to say, well, you didn't
right,
get in this
exactly.
house the real way.
You cheated to get up here. So I used my cheat mode and I got into the house. And unfortunately, there's some people who will take that to the grave that's how they believe, and it's whatever. And if they want to believe that, that's fine. But I think more along that line, AR. AR is already in our lives, and we're not even realizing it's happening. It is. You ever noticed when you were growing up how there wasn't iPhones, and then there were? We have no idea where they came from. Just one day, everybody had an iPhone.
They were here.
Yeah, just weird and miraculous. And that's the same way as happening with AR. It's already filtering into our lives. Pokemon is a great way. Now you can see it on your phone with little creatures hitting on your couch right now. Maybe there's a Charmander behind you. You don't know. Bring out your phone. So, there's only one way to find out. And, I think that is what's going to be. There's going to be accessibility options. There's going to be apps that show you navigational paths to get around bad sidewalks. There's going to be apps that come out maybe from Ablegamers that will tell you where to play a game and how to play it and show you in real time. And I certainly look forward to those days, and I don't think they're necessarily that far away. And I think that's sort of where I'm hoping to answer the original question. Where this is going to go is we're going to have to keep adapting. A really nice thing is now we have the ear of 2 of the 3 major platforms. We have PlayStation, we have Xbox in our corner. Nintendo still hates me. We're doing well in that. You notice backwards compatibility is back, which means that probably all of our technology is going to work on these new consoles. Now, if I did know anything, obviously I couldn't tell you because golden
Sure.
robots will jump out of my closet and beat me to death live on Twitch. So I can't tell you about that. But what I can say is that Ablegamers works very hard to continue pushing publishers to make sure that these things will be backwards compatible and will work. You know, what happened to us with Xbox 360 is we came out with all these cool gadgets that worked on 360. We had everything nailed down. If you had a disability, you could come to us and say, hey, I have this disability. What should I do? We had an 80% chance of having an off the shelf solution that would work. And then they came out with the Xbox One, and we were like, well, there goes all that work. Threw it over our shoulders, and it was all gone. So we don't want to do that again. So hopefully this time they heard our cries for please don't block everything else. And you know, now that they have an Xbox accessibility team of their own, I think we're in a better spot. So hopefully people will be happy with the inclusion that's coming, and they'll start to push with us, not against us.
Well, I think this next one's in line with that. This is one you sent me. This was sent to you privately from
Okay.
Mr. G.
Okay.
I'm so excited to hear your episode with Greg. I don't have a question per se, but maybe bring up the topic of how catering to more players helps everyone in general. I have 2 kids under 2, and the games that only require one hand have been a godsend. Pokemon Let's Go came out when my first son was born, and just being able to play with one Joy-Con was crucial. Playing Red Dead, I got stuck playing poker with the controller on my knee. Anyway, love what you do for the community, and good luck during these trying times, Mr. G. Is that, I think, one of the I should say, I think that's one of the great benefits of your work for everyone is that when you go and you're coming at it from your perspective, you're pushing people to make improvements for their game that aren't just for people who are disabled. They do benefit everybody.
Yep.
Being able to change subtitle size is great for everybody. And when a game doesn't do that now and it's a huge problem, we all yell about it.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't get mad? Even as recently as the latest Star Wars game, when the text is teeny tiny and you're trying to read it from your couch and across the room, and you need the old-fashioned monocle in your eye to get it done. Don't lie, I know you have one.
Oh yeah, you know I do. It's right next to my cummerbund.
So one of the things that is always on our minds is having the ability to look out for multiple people. So one of the things that happened in recent years, as Ablegamers has pushed forward, as people have begun to be Twitter famous and industry famous, Craig Kaufman, Mark Barley, myself, have names and people watch our Twitters, which is great. And we love the adoration from fans, but we're also working on this every single day. So we look out for people in all walks of life, right? So let's take, for example, Mr. G's example of Pokemon Go. Pokemon Go was horrifying if you had a MS, if you had multiple sclerosis, if you had muscular dystrophy. Absolutely locked you out of the game. If you had to stay inside your house where you couldn't go outside, horrifying because there's no way that you could go to the Pokestops. For those people, it was bad. For one-handed gamers, it was amazing. It was the best Pokemon game that had come out so far. And the idea is you have to push the companies to be inclusive to everybody while not alienating the people that have already had accessibility open for them. So there's a little bit of a danger now. Sometimes advocates on Twitter like to yell about accessibility from their point of view, and they only see from their point of view.
Sure.
And it's good to get that out there. It's good to tell the company your feedback so that they can take it into account, so that they can provide ways for people with your disability. But you got to be real careful that you never turn the messaging to be, well, this game's not accessible because it's not accessible to me. There are lots of games that are not accessible to Steve Spohn. Lots of games. But that doesn't mean that they're not accessible. Uncharted 4. I can't really play that game because that game wasn't designed with me in mind, but it was designed with someone else in mind who has muscular dystrophy. So a lot of people can play it. I can't. And so far, they haven't, added a lot more accessibility. So I still don't play it. I probably never will. Oh, well, there's other games. And, that's kind of the way you got to look at it is you give your feedback and you hope that it can do something. So one-handed gamers are in an amazing spot where there are so many companies that now understand, just like subtitles, just like closed captioning, that there's a lot of people who want to play with one hand because it's a convenience thing, right? It's not necessarily accessible. Maybe you're holding a baby with one arm. Maybe you're petting Portly with the other one. Who knows what you're doing? You're playing with one hand, and then therefore, one-handed gamers get the benefit of that too. Microsoft has something called the baby in the room, which is the reason that they close caption everything is because you need the ability, if you are a newborn's caregiver, to be able to play their game while the game is muted. That's a test that they put their games through in-house, is to be able to see, can I play this if there's a baby in the room? So that kind of accessibility, accidentally or not, is important. And it's what helps us get through some of these hurdles where people are like, oh, this doesn't have to be accessible because not everything needs to be accessible, blah, 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 thing I hear all the time. I mean, so there's lots of examples of that. But I think my favorite one is of Star Wars: The Old Republic. We gave them an award at PAX East, and it's kind of infamous. You may have heard from your friends about this one time or another. I'm gonna guess probably somebody complained about me to you at some point.
No one's ever complained to me about you. They know I wouldn't hear it. I'd be like, get the fuck out of the room.
The literally on a PAX panel, we're trying to give this lead dev of the Star Wars game this accessibility award, and he literally takes it and he goes, "Well, this was all accidental. We didn't actually mean to be accessible. It just kind of happened. So that's cool.
The fucking victory,
thanks."
dude.
Right? Literally putting it down in the middle of an audience, which immediately made my heckle stand up. And I went, well, sir, actually, accessibility can be accidental and quality of life improvements are accessibility. And just because you're serving one doesn't mean you can't help the other. So whether or not you want to call your accessibility accidental, the gold standard is to make people's lives better, and that's what you did. So thank you. I appreciate that. And he got super mad. And we really haven't spoken since then. I called him out in the middle of the PAX. But at the same time, I like, don't put down the reason for why you make accessibility. If you make it accidentally, who cares? Can more people enjoy your content? Cool. Like, don't downplay that, and certainly don't say, "Oh, we didn't mean to do that. Sorry."
Total accident.
Oh man, can't believe we made things accessible again. Gosh. So.
Your final friend zone question comes from Sextone, who's in the Twitch chat, I should say.
Okay.
And asked earlier, what can we do as able-bodied people living minimum middle wage incomes do to support Steven and Ablegamers? Like, what's the easiest way to be a part of this?
The way that you can support people with disabilities in general is you can make it a more quote-unquote normal experience. You can, if you see someone who's got a disability, go see if they have a cool personality. If they do, be friends. Don't find your nearest disabled person and decide you want a friend. That's not how that works. We're not like at a local store. You can pick us up.
I'm sure, just like able-bodied people, some disabled people suck, and you don't want to be around them.
Absolutely, there's the biggest mistake people make to me is they'll be like, "Oh, do you know so and so?" Because they're on Twitch or Twitter, and I'm like, "Yeah, I can't stand that person." Like, what do you mean? What? Like, yeah, it's like, no, we don't all get along. What are you talking about? Some of them are super over the top, yo, bro, I got that kill, haha, noobs, and I can't stand those kind of people. I don't care if they're disabled or able-bodied. So
sounds like Andy, yeah.
Oh man, burn. So it's one of those things where you should go make friends if you can, and if you're an able-bodied person, take into consideration a viewpoint that's not your own. Find people on Twitter. If you want to follow me, fantastic. If you want to retweet whatever Greg decides is worthy, retweet that. I don't care. It doesn't matter. Find people that you align with, and when you see a message that you don't necessarily understand, either amplify it or ask questions. Don't fight against it. Don't be like, "Oh, I don't have to play that game that way. Why does anyone else?" Well, because they do. Simple as that. And that is what you can do in all walks of life, not just video games. You can literally go anywhere you want. You can be an ally to any minority you want just simply by amplifying their messaging. And no matter what someone says, it's the truth from their own eyes. So believe them when they say it. Maybe they don't speak for everyone. Be wary of anyone who says they speak for everyone. Nobody speaks for everyone. But some of us who have experience in the field, it's like people who are currently arguing, well, the virus crap. and they're arguing against doctors on Twitter, telling them they don't know what they're talking about. It's like, I'm going to believe the epidemiologist of 23 years over you, Joe 420. So yeah, I think it's just a matter of amplifying voices. If you want to help able gamers, I know this sucks, especially in a time like now, but it's money. Able gamers is going to be hurting. We've lost so many events thanks to the world right now. As everybody's hurting. You know, if you're lucky to be financially stable and you can toss $5 a month to able gamers, that helps a lot. You know, not all of us are fortunate. So if you can't, what I always say is don't feel bad. I'm not talking to you if you are barely making your medicine and your food. Please don't take away from your medicine to give us $5. But if you're sitting Scrooge McDuck style on a vault full of gold coins, you know, give us a coin or two. Is all I'm saying. And then, you know, if you want to support me, follow me on Twitch and Twitter. That's the best thing you can do to support me. And tweet at Oreo. Tell them that they should sponsor me over Greg.
Kevin, cut the feed. Steven, thank you so much for being one of our cool friends.
Well, thanks for being my friend. Appreciate it.
Well, you've mentioned it a lot. What is your Twitter? Where can people find you?
Steven Spohn, spelled the correct way. You can find me on Twitch at Steve INSPAWN. On Twitter, it's Steve NSPOHN Spawn. And of course, Ablegamers. You can find literally everywhere. MySpace, Instagram, probably.
Ablegamers.org is the easiest way to find them.
Everywhere. Just look. It's already on things that haven't been created yet. Go find it.
Thank you so much for coming in. I hope I get to see you soon.
I hope so too, man. We got to play Fortnite soon.
We do. Yeah, I know. It's just so busy right now.
Chat, please tell Greg he needs to make time for Fortnite. Thank you.
I will make time for Fortnite. I will, and you'll stop talking about Oreos and everything we find. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been We Have Cool Friends. It's your regularly scheduled program here on Kind of Funny. You can find it on youtube.com/kindoffunny. Podcast services around the globe. We will be back officially on Monday with Alana Pierce. So there's a lot going on over there too. But until next time, it's been our pleasure to serve you.